Oh, hey. All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Bear with us. This is our first time attempting a YouTube live, and we've got all these things connected. StreamYard connected to YouTube. Hopefully, it works out. I'm Adriele. If you don't know me, and
Hi,
I'm
and I'm
with
Caren.
um, and we have decided that we want to start just having some sort of impromptu discussions about various topics as it relates to DEI. Um, some of the topics are, topics that we come across. Others are, ones that we're experiencing in our work. So, today's topic is around actually supporting DEI efforts as a professional, as a DEI practitioner, when the people within the organization, particularly those that belong to underrepresented or marginalized groups, don't want to participate or be involved with the efforts. So that is the topic for today. Um, Caren, any initial thoughts? This is very unscripted. We're just going to kind of talk through what we've seen. If anybody has questions or thoughts, feel free to add them to the chat. Um, and then hopefully just brainstorm and think about solutions because we're both very much action oriented when it comes to our style and approach to DEI.
Yeah. I think right off the bat, I just want to give people grace and space to not feel like they have to participate all the time, especially if you are a member of a marginalized group.
Right.
Um, it's blooming exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And so I just want to give people grace and space for not wanting to do the work. Um, yeah, and I also feel fully understand like there are a lot of organizations really look to their marginalized folks, and let's be very honest, they're Black folks, um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to kind of step in and to do that work. And yeah, I fully understand. Just no, I'm good. So I think that's just the right off the bat is like give people the space to opt out.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think from my standpoint, sometimes I find it tough because I'm like, oh, we need you to, hey, Mo on the go. It's like, hey, we need people, right, to actually tell us if our approaches are supporting their needs. But at the same time, especially if you weren't hired into a DEI position, it's not your job. So there is that part to account for. We often say DEI is everyone's job, and in an ideal world, that would be wonderful. But we also have to take into consideration the emotional tax that people have gone through and continue to go through on a daily basis. And so it doesn't feel like that is a solution, right? I know I spoke to someone recently. They were like, "Oh, I just want to like keep encouraging, people from historically marginalized groups to participate," and I'm like, "No, like I don't. That doesn't feel like the right approach here." Um, I think obviously opening the door for them, letting them know what's going on, but you should be letting everyone within the organization know what's going on. That's part of the flow of transparency as it relates to DEI topics. But to try to really force someone to participate when they're already just tired from existing, it's like that's not a solution.
Yeah. The other thing that I have been running into often is the concept of being billed versus not being billed, especially for marginalized folks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's already a different sense of what's expected of people and what kind of the expectations of work as your billable step and what you're already doing, and then to also add in the additional labor of doing DEI work on top of it.
Right.
Um, yeah, I it's just kind of hard where folks are like, look, I'm already trying to focus on all of my billable work. I really don't want to add on additional unbillable labor on top of it. So again, I would definitely default back to not forcing people to do that work. And if
Right.
anything, to really lean on folks who are not from marginalized communities to say, hey, this is our opportunity to step in and to be the allies we say we are, uh,
Right.
by picking up this labor instead.
Right, right. To play devil's advocate here, though, as always, because one issue I've been running into with a couple of my clients right now is that has become the case, right? We have people who they're working towards allyship. Some are pretty decent allies, but they're work in progress. And as always, allyship is a journey. There's no end destination at any point, right? We're all in this as an effort. And anyone can be an ally, to be clear. I can be an ally to other people. We all have to assess our degree and level of power and privilege as it relates to society, our workplace, et cetera. So there's always room to advocate for someone else, right? But when I'm talking about a workplace where people, often like me, who have a similar background, are historically marginalized, significantly underrepresented, and now we're having allies come in and do the DEI work, and folks like me are like, I'm good, they got it. I'm running into this issue where it's now like, all right, well, we got these DEI folks doing the work and it feels performative. Or is it genuine? Do they really care? And then they try, let's say we have this ERG or DEI committee or group, and they try to do some outreach and support underrepresented folks within that organization, but they're not encouraged to do that, or those folks aren't interested in having that support. So it's like, how do we navigate that then? Because for us, it makes it a lot harder as DEI practitioners to get things done when, you're giving advice, you're making suggestions for initiatives, programs, strategies. Folks are willing to do it, they go do it. And then the people that they're trying to support and help are like, nah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is like the super fine line. I don't know. I would think at that point, like, it would help for folks from marginalized communities to be second or third chair and to almost be subject matter experts, where I'm not going to do the work, but I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And I'm going to tell you how this should look. And I'm going to tell you what success actually looks like, as opposed to you being just performative. But right. I'm not going to do the work because, frankly, I have other stuff to do. So that's kind of how I would frame it up. But I fully understand. Yeah, it's hard because on one hand, and I think that ultimately, not just as a practitioner, but as a person, that's where I struggle. Is like, on one hand, I don't want to have to do the additional labor. But on the other hand, if I don't do the additional labor, then it's going to be even more convoluted, and then unwinding that's going to be even more difficult than if I were to do it myself. But at some point, you have to kind of override learned helplessness, and you have to just kind of force people to do that work. And if you don't ever really get to the point where it's like, hey, you say that you want to be an accomplice, you want to be a co-conspirator, you want to be an ally, that means you're going to have to do some work. And that means you're going to have to maybe fall on your face a little bit, or maybe be uncomfortable, or maybe you have to do some backpedaling and not look to me to help fix your messes. Like, I don't know. I think perhaps I'm just now in a spot where more divesting is what's making more sense to me right now, where it's like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. I keep running into that a lot. I haven't figured out how to toe the line of, and I'll speak very specifically right now. Like, there's a group of Black folks within an organization that I'm currently working with, and they're like, we're done. Like, we're here to do our jobs. We've tried, no one listened. Now you want to actually try to do something about DEI, and you want to come to us and you want suggestions. We gave you plenty of suggestions. No one actually attempted to implement them. And so even just that, like, education piece of like, what do you need? They're like, we already told you. Like, I don't want to keep repeating myself. So it's like, how do you also, I guess, how do you help those folks sort of reframe their mindset and start to look at the bigger picture? Because I know for myself, before I really got into DEI, I was willing to create ERGs and participate because I wanted those spaces for myself. And obviously, eventually, I ended up working in the DEI space full time. But I can also see a world in which I would have gotten tapped out if I kept my previous role and didn't go into DEI full time. I think there would have come a time when I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so how do you get people to look beyond just the individual self to think more broadly, especially when we're so underrepresented in certain spaces, in most spaces, quite frankly. And acknowledging that while it's not your job to be a representative for all folks that have your identity or background, people still by default are going to look to you. I mean, there are kids that are looking up to all these black engineers in, the tech space, like, oh, I actually see someone that looks like me. Even if you yourself as that engineer don't want to be seen in that way, that's how you're being seen. And so how do you get people to, I guess, again, shift that mindset? And I'm not asking you obviously for answers, but this is just like a general, like, what do we do, right?
Well, I don't know if we need to shift the mindset. I don't know if we need to shift it. I think like using that same example,
yeah,
sometimes just modeling the behavior alone is what works. And I think that sometimes sharing information within the spaces is what helps. Like if you are a Black engineer and there are people who are coming up behind you, the conversation isn't external anymore. The conversation is internal. The conversation is, then how do you start to reach out to those who are coming up behind you and say, hey, while you might love being an engineer or you might love being a UX researcher, here are some of the weird things that you're going to experience. And just know that when you experience those things, it's not you.
right.
And so I don't know. I think that there's now coming a point where when it comes to dealing with like more systemic issues, I don't know. I'm looking more towards those allies saying, okay, you want to get in the game? I'm going to put you in the game. I'm going to sit and I'm going to prepare the next generation for what's going to come next. And again, not to say you had to suffer, so I have to suffer, but to say it's better than it was when I started. But here are things that you need to look out for so that you can also be successful. And so that way you can still do the work of DEI, but you're not doing the 101 stuff. You can let other people do that work.
Yeah. I guess, see, continuing to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I have literally, and I see someone on the live right now who also was was there to witness this. There was a very senior Black person within the organization, and we basically approached them to have a conversation with, the Black ERG, and it was very much like, those are two separate things. Like, I don't like to bring my identity to work, and so I can't really give you any advice on what it's like to be a Black engineer, which was unsettling. And then kind of leads us to that other, we're kind of going down a rabbit hole, but then it's like, again, like if somebody is separating their identity or trying to, even though in reality we can't separate or take off parts of our identity because we're at work and then we're at home and then we're here, right? You're always going to be you. You just have to cover, or you choose to cover or suppress some aspect. And how people externally perceive you is another story, which you can't control. So that was just like that's the one instance that comes to mind that was just like frustrating. And I keep seeing and encountering instances like that where it's like, I don't want to talk about me being whatever identity, not just Black, but any identity. I am this is my role, this is my title, here's what I do. I get paid for it, I do it well, I'm a team player. Leave me alone.
Right. And well, and like the sad thing is when I hear stories like that, I hear one of two things. One is more charitable than the other. The more charitable thing I hear is, I have been traumatized enough that I can't even process this anymore. And for as much as I want to help shake them out of that, I also have to just kind of come to grips with the fact that for some folks, it really is just traumatizing enough that they're like, yeah, I can't do this. So that is the more charitable thing. The less charitable thing I hear is, I very much like where I am. And I very much like the fact that I get to taste the privilege of opting out when I feel like it. Yeah. And I'm trying to be very careful with my language here.
Yeah.
But I see that a lot too. And I see that a lot, especially in the tech space.
Mm-hmm.
where you have folks from marginalized communities who are just really happy being from a marginalized community and the proximity to privilege that they can be afforded by them.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then you know what? Good luck and Godspeed. We'll be here when that bubble pops.
You got it. Right. Yeah. I have yet to see it last forever. So yes, we'll be here when the bubble pops. Um, so returning back to our allies who are now deciding to do the work, and wanting to, you know, I don't even know what the word is, but just change things, see some sort of change. Any thoughts on things you've seen recently that have worked really well in situations like this?
I want to say yes, but my answer is not really.
Yeah.
And the answer is not really because I haven't really seen allies commit to the work and really commit to it. Because like in a best case scenario, the answer would be to actually provide cover for folks in marginalized communities and actually stand up to have those conversations. But the fact is, once it gets hard, I just don't see allies really stepping up. And the ones who do, it becomes so laborious
Mm-hmm.
that they also get burnt out and crisp too.
Yep.
And I can't blame them. I can't blame them at all. Because it's like you really are trying to do the work, and you could be Sisyphus only for so long before you also decide you no longer want to push that rock up the hill either.
Right.
So I most certainly do not want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but yeah, I don't know if I've seen anybody actually do it correctly
Yeah.
or do it well. I don't know if I could say I have.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of things done wrong, honestly. I can't tell you that I've seen any amazing transformational things happening. To your point of burnout, it's very interesting because I've seen a lot of people get burnt out experiencing some of the very situations that marginalized folks have experienced for ages,
Yeah.
right? So, like, one great example is like, allies come in and they're like, oh, well, we're going to help push this initiative forward, thinking leadership is going to support and listen to them. Wake up call. They don't. And then they're like, oh, so this is what you've been dealing with. And it's like, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that burnout is almost inevitable at this point. In the chat, Mo and the Go said, divest from corporate America. I'm all for that. Obviously, I work for myself, but still am involved with corporate America, right? Like, those are my clients. And I'm all for people leaving the corporate side of things. However, a lot of these organizations are not going anywhere anytime soon. And if we lack representation inside of those organizations, we're going to have an even bigger problem on hand. So that's part of why I keep doing this work, because I'm like, I recognize the power of even just having a few people that aren't part of whatever homogenous group exists within an organization.
Right.
Bless you. And I know there's like data and all that. Companies are more innovative if they're more diverse, but it really is the case. And especially if you're really diving into economics and looking at the spending power and how the spending power is shifting and going to continue to shift so drastically. I posted a video recently talking about the spending power of Black women and how in 2021 the spending power of the Black community in America was at $1.6 trillion, right? So you tell me how that's going to work out for you if you don't have representation of those folks internally to help you capture sentiments of people within that community, so that you can sell your product or gain investors or whatever it is, right? And obviously not our problem. I'm happy to put my money back into the Black community. But my point is the power that these organizations have is not going anywhere anytime soon. So even though our spending power has shifted, there's still a very deep-rooted oppressive mindset that a lot of people carry and therefore are not, placing their money in areas where we'd like to see. So Most as create competing companies take the risk. You could do that, but it takes a very long time, right? It takes, and I mean, I can't remember the stat, but the number for companies, startups, et cetera, that fail is pretty high. So if you don't have the capital, if you don't have the network, which is honestly, the network is the capital. That's the biggest barrier for a lot of people trying to create any kind of competing organizations. Yep, conundrum. Yeah. So many layers. So many layers. It's like an onion. What else? What else has been top of mind? It doesn't have to be directly related to this topic, although we tend to rant, I know.
And this is, definitely insight to the conversations that we have frequently. It's just kind of where we are and what we see happening. It's just, I think where I'm also just kind of concerned, I mean, and this is related but tangential, I guess, is the idea of backlash. I was just talking with the client a little bit earlier today about backlash, and that, that's another reason why a lot of folks are marginalized groups. And I'm not just talking about our big three, that's race, gender, and orientation, but
sure,
even in the concept of talking about kind of how so many organizations are now pushing to go back to a hybrid or in-person model, it's really affecting those who are caretakers, whether that's taking care of children or parents or other members of their family. The backlash is starting to happen now. And so a lot of people, instead of fighting against the backlash, are just tapping out completely.
Yeah.
And so we're just seeing that, being like, you know what, I'm just not going to participate. And so what I'm hoping will happen is like the pendulum will kind of bring itself back into balance a little bit more, where organizations start to see that, okay, maybe we over-rotated a little bit too hard here. Maybe we do need to be mindful of the fact that we did the past 3 years this way, and we managed to make significant profits. We managed to do all these things while still having this new way of working.
Yeah.
And I know, I feel like I went around a little bit in a circle there, but
no, I think that is, I have someone right now that I'm really close to that's been dealing with that very issue where where are we? Thursday. On Tuesday, they had a new manager basically tell them, after working for roughly 2 years in basically a hybrid situation, that they now want them on site starting Wednesday, yesterday, every day. And it was very matter of fact. There was no empathy. There was no, let me even ask you, or let me give you time to like come back in. There was no consideration for, this person now has to travel in every day and take 4 hours out of their day almost to commute. There's no consideration for, oh, this person might have a life outside of this, to your point. They may be parents or caregivers. There's no consideration for, the immunocompromised. People are being forced to go back in. I had someone at a client who was like, I am pretty much missing out if I'm not present in these large meetings, but I'm also risking my health every time I do it, because I can't keep, they already had COVID a couple times, and they're like, I can't keep going in and risking getting COVID again, because it is tearing away at my immune system. So it's like, we're not even, these organizations aren't even taking into consideration the humanity of it. And yet you think that people are going to just accept it and come in and perform above and beyond and help you keep generating revenue. Like, that's not the case. And now we have even more visibility of the inequity and the unjust treatment that people are going through all of our lovely social channels, and people aren't tolerating it. People are standing up for themselves at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that is one thing that I'm fascinated to see how that's going to work itself out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're right. Like, what do you do when you're like, yeah, none of this is okay. Like none of this is okay. And I just won't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Brian, you bring up a really good point. Those who are immunocompromised, what do you do? What do you do?
Try to, mask up. I've seen in some I've seen some workplaces try to provide accommodations, right? Keeping people spaced out, still temperature checks. Some are actually requiring vaccinations still, um, air filtration, things like that. But still, again, to your point earlier, we've seen our people managed through 3 years of being at home or some sort of hybrid? Why are we now requiring people to be on site all day? Other than you have your rent or whatever it is to pay on your corporate office, but I mean, it's really unfortunate. And the people that I do talk to that have been going into these workplaces still are just, a lot of the workplaces, they're still not socializing as you would expect. The water coolers still aren't happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of like, why are you forcing people to do something they don't want to do?
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
Go on site to be marginalized, says Mo. Yes, exactly. Right. And I mean, there were a couple studies that they did recently where they were talking about how a lot of marginalized folks have found comfort in working from home because they don't have to they don't have to hide some identity of their or some aspect of their identity. They don't have to code switch. They don't have to deal with people's unsolicited touching of their hair or asking questions or the unnecessary small talk. um, and there's just like this whole we always say, Mo and I joke around, we're like showing face, and that's really what it is. Because what do you want me to do? Why do I need to come to this office? I could shuffle virtual papers at home, quite frankly. Like, so yeah, it's really interesting. I really do want to understand why so many orgs are so firm on it and almost like inflexible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I ultimately think that it is. I think it's a way of like society saying, okay, we're done with this. We're done with this portion of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to where we were before.
Yep.
And the way that you do that is, okay, the pandemic is over, and I put that in the biggest quotation marks I possibly can. The pandemic is over. Okay, everyone, let's get back to work, get back to what we were doing before.
Right.
And I think that there just is a lack of realization that there is no get back to where we were before. There just isn't.
Yep. And you can't force that. And people are more vocal about it at this point to say, no, like, we're not going to keep operating as before. No, I'm not going back to the way things were. People have uprooted and shifted their entire lives over the past few years. And then you think that they're just going to be able to just wake up one day and, oh, okay, back to how things were before 3 years ago.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's definitely frustrating. Any other thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this was great. Like being able to put our conversation on camera.
I know we have these all the time. This is certainly one of the milder conversations we've
really
had in a while, because I think they'll get a little bit more intense. I think part of it was also just us testing out the waters with this whole live stream, but we would like to start doing this on a weekly basis. So we'll be back next week with something else. We may not always have topics. We may just hop on and just chop it up and talk through, what we're currently seeing in our work, what we got going on. Actually, that might be a good thing to highlight. Is there anything that you can highlight right now in terms of like the work that you're doing?
Yes. I'm super excited. I am finally at the point where I am ready to launch not one, but my 2 programs coming up. If you would like to know some more information, get some basic stuff. So I have 2 programs. One is Manage In, and it is designed for entry-level managers and those who would like to become managers. And that is how to manage from a DEI lens, both coming in as a manager and also managing your reports. And then the second one is Diversity as a Product. And that is how exactly do you take a lot of the agile methodology, take a lot of the productization of things, and apply it to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The goal is really to put some structure around how you build stuff for DEI. So both of those things are up and running. If you'd like to know more, please head to my website, theprofessionaladult.com. Sign up. I have both coaching available, and then also it is a self-paced course that will come up, and that will be happening late February, early March. So we'll get that up and out.
Nice. Awesome. And I'll add links to the video after. My links are there. Y'all can go go check out my work on my site. I'm not about to give a rundown. If you really care, you can go look. I am working on a really, really cool project, though, that I'm super excited about, that I'm hoping will get released over the next week or so. Tool for leaders to become more inclusive leaders. And I haven't seen anyone do it yet. So I'm pretty stoked about it. So we'll see how that goes, but I'll share more once it's released. I'm not even gonna tell y'all what it is. I'm gonna just drop it and be like, here goes the link. Go check it out.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Well, I think we stayed almost under our 15-minute mark. Maybe not. No, we didn't. It's almost 30 minutes, but that's okay. We rambled a little bit, but we'll be back next week to talk more about DEI. If you have any topics, questions, etc., drop a comment and we will try to cover it. Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.